The following lesson is linked to Learning Outcome 4, Language. It addresses the assessment standard that requires learners to use structurally sound sentences in a meaningful and functional manner. Learners should be able to use simple sentences appropriately and correctly and construct acceptable compound and complex sentences by using clauses, phrases, and conjunctions. Learners should also be able to recognize and use different sentence structures such as statements, questions, commands, and instructions with growing accuracy.
Hello, welcome. I'm Nicola Shongwe. In this lesson, we will learn how structuring the clauses in your sentence can help to add variety and even alter the meaning of your writing. After watching this lesson, you will be able to identify different sentence structures and use a variety of sentence structures. The most basic sentence is a simple sentence. It contains one main clause. Remember, we defined a main clause in one of the previous lessons. A main clause is the clause conveying the main idea of the sentence. It can stand on its own and still make sense. It always contains a finite verb. The following sentences are simple sentences. They each contain one main clause only. I am a teacher. My sister is a doctor. Each of these sentences could stand on its own and make perfect sense. So can you define a simple sentence? A simple sentence is a sentence that has one clause. That means it has one subject and one finite verb. As we saw in the previous lesson, sometimes we want to have two main clauses in the same sentence in order to show the difference or for a comparison. So we could take our two simple sentences and combine them like this. I am a teacher, but my sister is a doctor. I am a teacher and my sister is a doctor. I am a teacher, semicolon. My sister is a doctor. In these examples, the coordinating conjunctions and, but, and the semicolon are used to combine the two simple sentences. We've seen this type of sentence before in a previous lesson, and we call sentences that combine two main clauses balanced sentences. There's another name for it, and we call it a compound sentence. Let's define this. A compound sentence is a sentence consisting of two main clauses joined together by a coordinating conjunction, such as and or but or a semicolon. Because a compound sentence is a balanced sentence, both clauses are equally important. To find out whether a sentence is a compound one or not, count the number of finite verbs in order to determine the number of main clauses. Have a look at the next sentence. Is it a compound sentence? Jack fell down and broke his crown. Here, the subject is Jack. Jack fell down and Jack broke his crown. Even though there's only one subject, there are two finite verbs, fell and broke, one on either side of and. So there are two main clauses, Jack fell down and Jack broke his crown, and this makes it a compound sentence. So be careful when you're trying to work out what type of sentence is being used. It may seem tricky, but it isn't. Just remember to count the finite verbs. Another method you can try is to do what I did and insert just the subject after the conjunction and see if it still makes sense, like this. You can fill in another Jack so that the sentence now reads, Jack fell down and Jack broke his crown. The sentence still makes sense with the subject repeated, so it's definitely compound. Now let's look at another type of sentence called a complex sentence. You will use this sentence when you want to talk about one thing only, but you need to give the reader some extra information. Let's look at some examples. The accident happened at the intersection. The accident happened after midnight. The accident happened because the driver was drunk. What do these sentences have in common? Well, they each have the same main clause. The accident happened, but in each one there's extra information given about the accident. In the first sentence, you are told where the accident happened, at the intersection. In the second sentence, you are told when the accident happened, after midnight. And finally, you are given a reason for the accident happening, because the driver was drunk. These bits of additional information are called subordinate clauses. Just as in the workplace, a subordinate is controlled by a boss, in this case, the boss is the main clause. So, a subordinate clause is a clause that tells us more about the main clause. It performs the function of an adjective or adverb. Sentences that contain one main clause and one or more subordinate clauses are called complex sentences. So now we can define complex sentences. A complex sentence is a sentence that consists of a main clause, a simple sentence, as well as one or more subordinate clauses that provide extra information. Here's another example of a complex sentence. In this case, the subordinate clause is in the middle of the sentence. The woman who owns the spaza shop is my aunt. Where's the main clause in this sentence, and which part is the subordinate clause? Well, let's look for the subject. Here it is, the woman. And then let's look for the finite verb, and here it is. There's also a complement. Here, my aunt. You can say, the woman is my aunt. This is the main clause because it conveys the main idea of the sentence. It contains a subject and has a finite verb, and it can stand on its own and still make sense. It's a simple sentence. But in our example, extra information has been added, and that's what makes it a complex sentence. This extra information, who owns the spaza shop, is the subordinate clause. If you're battling to identify the main and subordinate clauses, read through the sentence carefully and place commas where you would pause. We could do this with the sentence we've just looked at. The woman, comma, who owns the spaza shop, comma, is my aunt. Here, commas, or you could use brackets, separate the non-essential subordinate clause from the main clause. Right, so far in this lesson, we've looked at 3 types of sentence. Let's summarize what they are. Simple sentences have one main clause. Compound sentences have 2 or more main clauses. And complex sentences have 1 or more main clause and 1 or more subordinate clause. But there's still one more type of sentence. What happens when a sentence combines more than one main clause with one or more subordinate clauses? It's a compound sentence, but is also a complex sentence. So the logical name is a compound complex sentence. A compound complex sentence is a sentence containing more than one main clause and at least one subordinate clause. Let me show you an example. When I'm at school, I enjoy socializing, but I hate doing work. First of all, let's look for the main clauses. I enjoy socializing and I hate doing work are the main clauses because they could each stand on their own. At the start of the sentence, we are given some additional information. When I'm at school. This tells us more about when the main clauses occur, but it cannot stand alone, so it's a subordinate clause. You're not likely to find children's stories written using compound complex sentences. This is because these sentences contain interrelated ideas and might be difficult to understand. You might, however, find them often in academic papers, scientific writing, and even editorials. Now here's a task for you to do. State what type of sentence each of the following is. Number 1. Watching films is my passion. Number 2. If you want to keep me happy, you should just give me a box of popcorn and let me sit and watch. Number 3. I love to watch movies, but I wouldn't want to act in one. And lastly, number 4. Douglas and Zeta Jones, who are both famous actors, couldn't get married in peace and had their wedding invaded by photographers. So now you've learned how to vary your writing in order to make it more interesting and to convey ideas in different ways. In our extension lesson, we'll learn more about adding variety to your writing. So we'll see you then. Goodbye.